Hi, this is Shannon Port, and I welcome you to the Art of the Feminine podcast. Today, we will be discussing the archetypal energies of the Virgo full moon that is happening in just a couple days. It's happening on March 12th, 2017. And so, um, this is a little, we're doing the video a little bit closer to the actual event this time. I thank all of you that were present at the attempted live stream that happened on, I think it was March 7th. It was a few days ago, and we attempted twice to get it up in a live stream, and we had a little bit of interference. And so I'm giving it a go today on Friday, March 10th. And so I have not announced this video. And so even though I'm doing a live stream, and I also don't have the chat on today, I want to say that I did figure out all the details about using chat, and I'm really excited to use it, but I won't be using it today in this video. And I haven't announced the video, so I don't know if there will be anyone with us live today. So welcome to the podcast. So we are going to be talking about the Virgo full moon, and the theme that we're going to bring in and really go into is media narrative. We're going to talk about media narrative, mass perception, and we're going to talk about something that's really, really relevant right now, huge, and something that we all really need to be talking about. And that is, we're going to talk about critical thinking and intuition, and how it relates to how we digest information. This is a very big topic at this time because, as probably many of you know, if you're watching YouTube and you're kind of up on what's happening, there's really a battle for information happening right now. And there's really this is really a time when we are being asked to look at how we share information, how we digest information, and how we are able to perceive the truth. And there's some deep spiritual and metaphysical information that comes in around this topic. And so my intention in this video is to contribute to a healing of the media, and a healing, in fact, creating a new media, but coming at it from a place of wanting to be united, but also wanting to have some objectivity, where we are able to create a space where we can hear different voices in the world. And so we will get into that as we talk about the Virgo full moon. And so Venus is retrograde right now. That's big. I'm going to do a video on Venus retrograde in next week with information on the Aries equinox and how they are all working together at this time. All right, so there's a lot of information that came in for this podcast. As a lot of you know, how I do it is that I look at the moon. We use the full moon and the new moon as a platform to look at what's happening in the world. I work with the archetypes of the major arcana, and I look into what I see happening at that portal, because the full moon, they're both portals. The full moon and the new moon are portals. But I look at the way the archetypes are speaking to each other, and the archetypes represent our consciousness. They represent the collective consciousness. They represent our psyche and our emotional body on Earth. They represent both the light side and the shadow side of our mind. And so we look at the archetypes and we see what kind of wisdom can be shared. And it usually is given what would be an appropriate topic that will tie into the energies that we're going to be looking at. So today we're talking about the media, and we're talking about narrative. That's huge. How narrative shapes our world, how narrative determines what we think about the world and what we think about people, what we think about countries, about nations, about races, about religions, about what we think about absolutely everything. Narrative it's very important, and the media has a lot of power to shape our narrative. So we're talking about critical analysis, which is very connected to Virgo. And so this is a Virgo full moon. There's a lot of energy happening at the time of the full moon. And so there really is, the full moon is about birth. it's about culmination and about illumination. There's a lot of energy available at this time for a lot of revelations, for a lot of change in how we digest information. And you'll see as we talk about the energies, um, what that's all about. Okay. I have a lot of writing, and so I'm going to try to be, I'm going to try to let what's important come to me because there's no way we'll get through everything. All right. Oh, yes. All right. So, and I'm going to give a little bit of an idea of where we'll go, like I did in the last video. So the media in many ways puts us in a state of a perpetual state of conflict. It very much plays a role in keeping a polarity, keeping a fight going between oftentimes it's two sides, because polarity works very powerfully when we have one side against another side. Especially we see this in politics. We end up with a kind of a really good situation to create polarity consciousness. The media in our world is set up to trigger the emotional body of humanity and the emotional body of the planet, and it does a very good job of this. When we are triggered, and this is really important, this is when we are triggered, we cut ourselves off from the divine flow of intuition. And as we see when we look at the Pisces and the Virgo axis, we're going to see how critical thinking and intuition work very well together. They are the masculine and feminine aspects of our consciousness and our ability to process information. We need both. If we just get stuck in our head, we get cut off from the deep wells that our feeling consciousness can bring in through the power of intuition. If we're only relying on intuition, we don't ever process anything through our intellect. Sometimes we end up more in an escapist kind of reality. We end up in more of a Neptune kind of reality, and Neptune rules Pisces, where we're not really grounded into the earth. So we really need to use both. Our critical thinking can become very, very intuitive, and that's what we hopefully are moving towards. All right, so when we are triggered, we're cut off from our intuition. So the way we process information is very, very important. It has to do with the reality that we create, the way we process information, the way we receive truth, the way we are able to discern what is not true, and the way we're able to really feel if something isn't right. Will affect the way we process information and how we determine what is really happening in the world around us. These things are connected to our emotional body, and they can really, really bring a lot of energy into our body, the way we take in information. And that's what Virgo is about. Virgo rules, it rules the nervous system because it's ruled by Mercury, and it also rules digestion and the intestines, and how we take it, how we become what we eat, both intellectually and with food. It has a lot to do with how what we take in is what we create our reality with, both our psychological reality, our emotional reality, as well as our physical body. And that in turn creates our environment around us. So the media in place right now, and of course this is coming through one stream, and this is coming through the information that I'm working with, and I realize that there are other opinions as well, but coming through this stream, the media right now is in place to divide humanity and not to unite humanity. It enforces the matrix of polarity consciousness. And so it's very much playing its role in keeping polarity, in keeping the ongoing war alive by the use of narrative and by the use of its control of mass perception. It has a lot of power, the mainstream media does, but that's changing. It's starting to get spread out. And so I thought this is a good one. The archetype for media, working with the Chaldean numbers and the archetypes, is key 15, which is the devil in the arcana, in the major arcana. So media, the archetype is is key 15. It's the devil. The devil archetype, it's one of the last 7 in the major arcana, and so it's very powerful. It begins the stage of spiritual development to master that archetype. The devil represents bondage and it represents liberation. So in its dark side, it binds, and it's ruled by Saturn. It rules the sign of Capricorn, but it has that Saturn influence where it contracts. And so it creates bondage when it binds us to something. And when it binds us to something that's not true, it creates a lot of bondage. It creates manipulation and control. But the light side of that is liberation. So the media has the power to keep us in bondage, but it also has the power to liberate us because it's about mass communication. And so we're at a time right now where something very powerful that we can do is to start to question what we're hearing, why we're hearing it, who's influencing it, who's behind it, and how we can shift that into something that really serves truth and justice and creativity on earth, that serves to unite, that serves to inform, that serves to really shine a light on all sides of every situation so that we can be informed and really understand what's happening. So in that way, the media rules perception. And so in the archetypes, it's perception that sets us free. The way we perceive will be the way that we are released from the bondage of key 15, which is the devil. I've talked a lot about this archetype. I want to talk about it more, but I've talked about it in so many of the podcasts that I do and some of the that are in these archives. So you can, especially if you want to look up the one that's on key 15. All right. So the message of this podcast is about how we can find ways to create a really good, powerful media that's in the light and that is really in service of the human race. It's about critical thinking, intuitive analysis. It's about the marriage of the inner being that we are. We have an inner being and then we have our outer projection. So it's about the marriage of the masculine and feminine, the inner reality with the external reality. We need both. And something that's very important to say right now is that we are in a world that's cut off from the inner being. We're in a world that just is so connected to the horizontal platform and what it sees on the outside that in many ways, when you feel what's happening in the media, it's very external. It's not connected to truth, to wisdom, to love, to serious intelligence and the ability to analyze data, the ability to really look at it. It's playing games. It's not real right now. In that way, we're cutting ourselves off from the intuitive, which is the feminine aspect, and we need to regenerate that. The masculine represents reason, and it represents the noble protector of the feminine. The feminine has a lot of power to protect too, but in the outer world is meant to uplift the creations of the feminine, to hold them in a place that they're honored, that they're loved, that they're fed, that they're protected, and that there is truth and justice and balance and harmonious energy in our world so that we can thrive and we can create and do what we're really here to do instead of some of this nonsense. All right. So, I'm going to go through the 4 sections that we'll do in this video. So we're first going to talk about the Pisces and Virgo axis, and we're going to talk about the archetypes, the laws of correspondence, and what they correspond to. So we've been talking about Virgo and Pisces for a while, but we're going, in case anyone's new, we're just going to say a little bit about the Virgo axis and Pisces axis. Then we'll go into the aspects that are taking place at the full moon. We'll look at the archetypes, how they're dancing, how they're talking to each other, and how they relate to what's happening on Earth. And then we're going to look at the news media. We're going to just look at it and the information that I've gathered. We're going to look at how we digest information. We're going to look at the narrative. What is the narrative? I'm not going to go into specific narratives, but I will hint at them. And because this isn't this platform isn't meant to be political, or it isn't meant to point out specific individuals at this time, but it's meant to create inspiration to really really take a step back and ask, are we using intuition? Intuition always aims at bringing peace, at bringing prosperity, and at bringing love. Intuition is love. When we're connected to intuition, we're in the now moment and we're connected to love. And so if we ask ourselves, am I connected to my intuition right now? Even as we're processing media, or if we ask ourselves, is this stream of information I'm receiving intuitive, or is it only stuck in the lower aspect of the head, which is the ego? The higher intellect is very filled with light. It's very much connected to the divine mind. And that way, the intellect of the mind is powerful. The lower mind is the ego. It's where we get connected to things like greed, domination, um, you know, all kinds of things. We can go on and on and on about it. But the ego gets us in trouble. The ego, by the way, is also a 15 archetype. It's also connected to the devil. And there's a light side and a dark side to it. So we're going to look at sort of the polarity consciousness on Earth. I mean, we have it even in politics, and in the US, we have a two-party kind of tyranny, that we have this polarity consciousness where there's only two streams that we are allowed to go into, and they're constantly pitted against each other. And it's the media that's helping to create this. It's really doing its job as well. So we're going to talk about the heart, intuition, wisdom, how we can be solution oriented, how we can bring wisdom and truth back into this platform. We're going to talk about the emotional energy and how the trigger effect is used to harness the emotional power of humans. It's a constant state of trigger consciousness, pulling at the emotional body, making people hysterical, and in this mass dramatic hysteria that truthfully does not, from a metaphysical standpoint, it doesn't do a lot of good in the long run. It can make things happen in the moment, and oftentimes people point to that, but look at when this movement happened or this riot happened. But the built into hysteria in a triggered emotional body, built into that is a perpetual cycle of woundedness. And so anything that starts from that kind of hysteria and that kind of chaos and drama carries the seed of perpetual strife and struggle. And so that's why many of these movements that were created that way, that appeared to create solutions and reforms, we're still dealing with them because they didn't truly land. They didn't land all the way. And then they were manipulated and used to perpetuate constant battles and constant divisiveness. All right. Then we're going to look at then we're going to have to go quick on all of this, but we'll look at Facebook, social media, and how all of these things contribute and get and become another extended platform. And then we'll finish with asking some questions. We're going to ask some questions to make this information practical. If you're really interested, how can I use some of this information as it's coming in? And how can I really use it to do something in my life, to make immediate change, to all of a sudden step back and start processing from a more integrated and wise place. All right. So we'll look at the Virgo and we'll look at the Virgo and Pisces axis. So Virgo's about digestion. It's about digestion. I don't want to get all confused with all these papers I have. Virgo's about digestion, and it's about how we extract the goods and then eliminate what we don't need. And so something powerful to say right now is that it's okay. In fact, I've said this in the last video. We've talked about a lot of information that kind of leads into this video on the last one. Is that I look at, I'm in a stage right now where I'm looking at all the media, everything from the liberal to the conservative to the alternative to the truth to all, and a lot of mostly American, and seeing how it plays out. So not just getting my perspective from one stream, but looking at all of them. And so you can still extract truth, even though you see a horrendous amount of manipulation of the truth and manipulation of the narrative. You can still extract the truth. And that's the brilliance of the human creative power and the human creative intelligence, is that when we add intuition and we really just breathe and take our time with it and stand back and allow that stream of our higher processing faculty to enter into it, we can start to put together the puzzle. We can start to put it together. Ideally, we would like to have platforms that are in service and that really want to spread truth and give the power of the word a chance on the planet, so that we're not one-sided and constantly biased and constantly just opinionated, so that there's real information in a way that is accessible. So Virgo rules this. It rules the way we have digestion. We are what we eat. Um, all right. Pisces, because the sun will be in Pisces and the moon, the full moon will be in Virgo. Pisces is intuitive. It's about synthesis. It's about what's behind the veil. It's about the depths of intuition. It's about what is hidden, what is being manipulated. It's about trance and hypnotic states. It can be about escapism. It can be about a twisted perversion of sexuality in a way that harms. Um, and it's about dreams. It's about the astral, and it's about our dream time. It's about the way we receive art and the way we create, the way we tap the depths of our soul for our creative power. It's an intuitive feminine sign, and it's a water sign. Virgo is about critical intellectual analysis. It can also be about perfection. And there's a reason. Virgo's connected to the virgin goddess. It doesn't necessarily mean it's about remaining a virgin, but it's about purity of heart. The pure heart becomes like the full moon, and the full moon is able to receive the rays of all of the emanations of power. We see this on the tree of life and in the ninth Sephirah in Yesod. Yesod is the foundation, and it receives the emanations of all the others. We also know about the moon because we're talking about the purity that Virgo represents it as this goddess. The moon works at the very highest levels of creation, and it also touches into the depths of the darkest and the low. And so it's very sacred to understand the archetype of the moon. The archetype of the moon is the high priestess, but it gives us insight into how it can go very, very light, but it can also touch the dark in a way that if we're out of touch, we can completely be used by it. We can be used by our own inner dark. It's our subconscious mind. And when we lose track of ourself and we're not aware, we don't have awareness of how we're acting, why we're reacting, what's going on in our emotional body. The dark side of our own moon, which is key 18. Key 18 is Pisces in the tarot, and that's the dark side of the moon, begins to take hold of us and create things that we don't want. So Virgo is also about organization and processing, and it's about the way we build our body. It's about our health. It's about our daily work, because our daily work is about our health. It's about how when we're healthy and when we're digesting properly our daily lives are good. They're inspired, they're uplifted, and they're very, very able to accomplish and be practical and achieve that perfectionism that goes a lot along with Virgo. So in our media right now, I'm going to save that for when we get into the media, but we're not really encouraged to challenge. We're not really encouraged to challenge the mainstream official narrative. In fact, those who challenge the mainstream official narrative on many levels are retaliated against. And I wanted to say this because it's very important. And I know this from observing media really closely for many, many years now, but especially in this past year. The alternative media has been created for one reason, for other reasons, but for one main reason, that when there's not a place to go with the truth, something else has to be created. And when there's so much censorship and so much manipulation of the truth, and it becomes such a game, obviously other channels of information, other streams are going to pop up so that there's a place for truth to be heard. So right now with the internet and with all the alternative media that's taking place on YouTube, on blogs, all over the place, the truth is getting out. Some of this truth, I want to be honest, some of this, not everyone is of the highest integrity, not everyone is completely awake, but you can piece it together and find out true information in a way that we couldn't before we had that available to us. And so it's very important, and it's meant to continue that way. It's being challenged very, very seriously. We've all heard the well, it's propaganda. I mean, we've all heard about fake news, and there is fake news, to be certain. However, the truth is out there too, and that makes it a very, very, very powerful thing. We each have to discern our own truth. Not everyone's going to extract the same truth. Some people will go take. It's about, some people will take it to extremes and activate trigger consciousness and be internally violent, or so upset that they lose balance. That can happen when we put ourselves in front of so much different information, but we're meant to be able to be guided through our intuition. And that's why intuition and critical thinking and analysis are part of this podcast. We need to go back to remembering what it is. In fact, I was I was talking to my son recently about critical analysis and intuition and creativity. And is that really being encouraged in our school system? And I'm not going to come up with the information that he gave me, but it's something we need to look at. We need to look at, are we being encouraged to use our original divine creative power to understand and make sense of what's going on? Or are we being told that if we question things that we have serious concerns about, that we are in the realms of being conspiracy theorists or being aligned with fake news? And there's no need to get too worried about that, because the truth will always be known. In fact, the message of this video is to align with your own truth first, and then really, really search for the truth and live it. Know it, live it. Don't go into fear. Fear, anger, and hate also shut us down from our intuitive process. Try not to go in fear. Take breaks, but ask your own creative divine self, what are you meant to do with the truth once you have it? How can you bring it into your life, share it in a way that's appropriate, and how can you make the biggest difference in healing this world? The things are dumbed down. The official it's things are dumbed down. They're polluted streams. Things are very toxic. They're filled with half truths. There's a lot of, you can find truth in all of it. Of course there's going to be truth in everything, but a lot of truth is half truth. You take the truth and manipulate it and create a narrative with it. We can expect that from certain media institutions and outlets that are aligned with a particular political agenda. I mean, that's normal to have opinionated and to have an alliance or an alignment with a particular political party or agenda, or something like that. However, it's important that it doesn't go into the stage of being pure propaganda. It's really important that it isn't toxic, that it isn't filled with literal lies, and it isn't. There's another important thing to say. Omission of the truth is as great as straight out lying. When the truth is when there's omission of truth, which is everywhere, that's the same as lying and deceiving and manipulating. So there needs to be places where we can have a clear look at what's happening. It's a little bit hard in this world, and it's because we're in such a triggered environment, and it's also because, and this is coming from the spiritual teachings around this, and the metaphysical teachings, and the archetypes. We live in a world, and it's the devil archetype, that we're in the elements, and sometimes we're often more connected in this consciousness to the exterior world that pulls us away from the intuitive inner plane. The external world represents the horizontal line, and the internal connection that we have inside us represents the vertical axis, which connects us with what would be known as our higher self, or our Christ consciousness, or our Atman, or or our own divine spark, whatever it serves to call that special inner being for you. choose it and go with it. So this isn't about it's not, this is universal. It's not about any particular um belief system. It's meant to be very universal. So the goal of the dark is to trigger people. The goal of the dark in this fight between the light and the dark on earth is to trigger people so that they're cut off from intuition. And so that's what we're seeing. All right, so we'll look at the key, we'll look at key 9, the Hermit, which is Virgo in the tarot. And we'll look at key 18, the Moon, which is Pisces in the Moreau, in the tarot and in the zodiac. So these archetypes all rule different things. Key 9, the Hermit. So that tells us so much right there, and I'm not going to go too much into it, but the Hermit is our ability to look inward and see the light and to process inwardly. It's our ability to withdraw sometimes from the external reality and get our information from within. It represents birth. It represents the response. It's the key 9. 9 is the ninth digit, and it's the birth. The number of the goddess has long been known to be 9, and 9 represents birth, the 9 months of pregnancy. And it represents the connection with the higher self within. That is the birth of this human journey, is to understand that we are connected to our higher self within. We have to look inward, though, in order to complete the marriage of the outer and the inner. So this is really powerful. And I just want to say this. We talked about the moon. The high priestess works through, her application is key 9. So the moon is very powerful in Virgo because she's the high priestess. She's the virgin goddess. She's the universal substance of creation. And it's through the power of the hermit that she works. The hermit is Virgo. Through her journey of working through the hermit, and this is powerful, she brings about the stage of awakening known as key 16, the tower. The tower, more and more lately, I'm feeling, is the true representation of the Holy Spirit and the awakening of the light of inspiration. The tower can mean our downfall. It can mean it's going to wipe everything out and take everything away so we can start over, or it can mean that awakening that comes with the enlightened consciousness. So the high priestess works through the hermit. The hermit is Virgo. The hermit is part of digestion. And so that gives you, through the law of correspondence, it gives you clues to how these things work. And then the awakening is that sudden receiving of the truth, the light of the higher light, the truth. This is so all over this full moon. It's not even funny. And I'm excited to get to it. And let's see how, okay, we have time. Good. Okay. So that's Virgo. Virgo is where the moon is, and the moon's lit up and it's huge and it's being trined by Pluto. Pluto's in Capricorn, trining the moon in Virgo. Huge amounts of power for regeneration, for rebirth, and for Pluto can also represent kind of a punishment or it's judgment. In the tarot, Pluto is the last judgment. It's the judgment of critical analysis. So Pluto's trining the moon in Virgo. So we'll look at key 18. Key 18 is the dark side of the moon. Key 18, the emperor, key 4, works through key 11, justice, to bring about the reorganization of matter, which is key 18. So this is, we'd have to go really into it to give all the information, but just understanding the moon, the moon, the dark moon that is Pisces, rules that the depths of the subconscious mind. And that's why it's so connected with intuition. It also rules the dark side that we've unchecked and that's ruling us and we don't know why. And it's the side that we can be manipulated through as well. So it's interesting that the emperor, which is key 4, works through the process of key 11, justice, to bring about the stage of the high stage of key 18 in awakening, which is reorganization of matter, the reorganization of our physical world. So by receiving the information and by holding balance, this is really important. So the by it, the emperor truly in its most noble form, the divine masculine and the patriarchal energies on this planet are meant to hold nobility. They're meant to be the square. It's key 4. It's a square. It's meant to hold the foundation of our world and to be a support system to all this world that is feminine, all that is birthed, our divine children. And so as the emperor works through justice, the true gift of the emperor is to bring justice, real justice. Now remember, key 11 justice is also equilibrium. It's balance. In order to have justice, there has to be equilibrium and balance. And we have to find that in the media in order to shape mass perception and reshape it. We have to return to a kind of balance. It doesn't mean that some things will go all the way one way and some things will go all the way the other way. That is the nature of our reality. We all know that. And there's always going to be dark and light. So just to be really clear, this isn't a utopian version. This is about working with what we've got right now. We haven't ascended. We're in this consciousness. We have to work with what we have. This is about holding equilibrium, those 2 pillars of the high priestess. So when you look at the high priestess in the tarot, she's between the 2 pillars. Those are the 2 pillars of justice. They're the severity and love is what they represent. And in between she sits, reading the sacred book of life, holding the Akashic records within her. Those are the same pillars that we see in key 11 in justice. We have to hold equilibrium. And so this is really about a return to understanding balance, knowing there will always be all the way one way and all the way the other way. But the real gems occur in those moments. It's about presence. The now moment is key 11. The now moment is really how we receive. It's 0 point. It's so good. It's all the goodness. And so Jupiter in Libra is talked a lot about that. So I think we said enough about Pisces and Virgo. There's a lot more in the other videos that were about the eclipses. So the media. Okay. So I wrote down some of the key points and some of the words. It sounds very negative, but I mean, that's just what's going on right now. So we're going to touch on censorship, propaganda, the exploited topics, the topics that are huge triggers that exploit. Now, I'm going to read this, but then I just remembered I haven't done the aspects for the full moon. So I'm just going to read this list and then go back and look at the aspects because they play into this. Narcissism. So we just said the exploited topics that are used by the media to really trigger the feminine emotional body. Polarity consciousness, trigger consciousness, deception, manipulation, half truths, hypocrisy, and blind allegiance. So, all right. So looking at this moon, we'll give 5 minutes to this now. What's happening at the Virgo full moon? We have Saturn is squaring the moon and the sun. So it's a loose square. It's a larger orb. It's 5 degrees, but Saturn is squaring the moon in Virgo, and Saturn is squaring not only the sun, but Chiron, Pallas Athena, Mercury in Pisces. There's a lot of energy happening in Pisces being squared. So it's also squaring the moon in Virgo, which is being trined by Pluto. So this square of Saturn, we talked about how Saturn is sitting right there at the galactic core, at the galactic womb, the download of the divine mother. That is where our waves of divine love are flowing in right now. You hear about these ascension waves. That's where they're coming from. Saturn is there now. Saturn works to bring things into form. It works to balance karma, and it can have a very negative effect, especially negative when we're not in our free will, when we're not using our power correctly and wisely. And that reminds me of something I want to say. And when we're not acting in ways that are aligned with unity and creativity, then it can really hurt us. And sometimes when we just need to grow, Saturn will work on us. Saturn wants to make sure that we get all the things that we've been carrying that have not been serving us. Saturn wants to show us by really seeing the fault, the error of our ways. how we can change those things. And Saturn does a good job of that. So Saturn is squaring Moon and Sun. It's a pretty big deal from the galactic core. Okay, Saturn is in positive flow with Uranus and Mars in Aries. So Mars is the archetype of the tower. We talked about how the tower brings in the tower brings in the Holy Spirit and the divine light. It's the archetype of Mars. It's that firepower to bring in the fire that purifies our consciousness. And in certain streams we call that the Holy Spirit. Um, Uranus is super consciousness. So Saturn's in positive flow with super consciousness and with the light of Mars, the light of the tower coming in. We're in a time right now where a lot of truth is meant to be revealed, where a lot of creative genius and bursts of aha and understandings are meant to starting to be received on Earth and through individuals. And so all of us play a part in this. Venus is retrograde, which is huge. I'm going to do this video on Venus retrograde in the alchemy of fire and water, because Venus is in Aries and going back into Pisces. She's in the first house. She's going back into the 12th. Venus is retrograde at the time of the moon. I believe it has a huge influence on the power, on the archetypal energies that are coming in this moon. All right. And also, and so we're going to talk about the cardinal cross too. All right. So let's move into the cardinal cross. So Saturn's in positive flow with Uranus and Aries, and with Mars, and Mars rules Aries, and it's at the end of Aries now. Okay, so Jupiter is opposite Uranus. It's also in square with Pluto, and still in square with Vesta. This has been going on for a while. I've talked about it in the past 2 videos. If you would like more information on this cardinal cross, not everyone may be calling it a cardinal cross if they're not looking at Vesta, but Vesta is a goddess asteroid that works with the sublimation of our sexual energy. She takes sexual energy, its Kundalini power, and uses it for great spiritual work. She's focused on work, focus, and on using that power that comes through us for spiritual purposes. And so that's huge that she is opposite Pluto. Vesta is in Cancer, the sign of the divine mother and the mother deep, opposing Pluto, who is in the patriarchal father energy of Capricorn. And there's so much Saturn going on at this moon as well. And so it's big that Pluto's in Capricorn, and Pluto is trining the moon. So there's this cardinal cross. So let's talk about the big thing here. The big thing here is that Jupiter is opposite Uranus. So Jupiter, we're just going to go into Jupiter is it's about expanding things, but it's in the sign of justice. And Jupiter also rules justice because it rules Sagittarius, which is about truth and justice and philosophy and the court system. And so Jupiter is hugely connected to justice. It's in Libra, the sign of justice. It's now retrograde, I believe. And it's opposing Uranus. Almost, I believe they're only 1 degree orb. This is justice squaring off with super consciousness. Uranus is that blast of super consciousness, and Uranus and Jupiter justice, and they are right there at this moon. Uranus is the whistleblower, because Uranus is about bringing in the high blasts of light, blasts of truth. And so Uranus really rules the whistleblowers, and we're seeing so many whistleblowers in that are coming in on the alternative media. And some are credible, some are legitimate, some may not be, but there are definitely, this is a time where the truth is meant to be known. And so we have to process through this information and come to our own understanding of what the truth is. So Jupiter in Libra all year, calling for justice. Now, remember, we just talked about key 4, the emperor works through justice and works through balance. And so it has to do with the emperor and the male energies as well, finally coming into justice, finally holding court in a real way, back to that nobility and back to the real divine justice, where it's about truth and it's about higher understanding instead of games, instead of the games and propaganda we have now. Um, so there's some divine rage here because of Mars was in, you know, in Aries and next to Uranus. So sometimes some divine rage will come in and there will be a moment of something needing to happen really quick. Divine rage is very different than human rage. Human rage is is a wounded emotional body, out of whack, being controlled, being manipulated. A divine rage comes in a flash, and it's connected to the goddess, and it takes care of business. It does what needs to be done with precision, with clarity, and with truth. um so I just really wanted to say that Jupiter opposite Uranus is really asking for truth of information through our critical and intuitive analysis of things, and calling for real justice now. We need to look at things in a way that we haven't been able to. All right, so there's some goddess energy. There's Eros and Ceres conjunct in Taurus at 11 degrees. Eros ruling sexuality, Ceres the mother, nurturing, how the rights of children, and the mother's ability to nourish her children, take care of her children, and provide for them the love that gives them power in their electric magnetic field. We know that the mother's love and her breast and her nurturing, along with the father as well, but the mother births the child. The mother's love helps the child have a powerful electric magnetic field, so that it's protected, so that it feels confident, so that it's able to connect to its higher self, so that it's able to navigate this world. So there's huge energy with the Ceres being conjunct Eros, because that's sexual power too, and their creative power, and that's their working with each other in Taurus, the sign of the earth and the earth mother. All right. Yeah, Chiron and Pallas Athene are conjunct, and they're right alongside the sun, being opposed by the moon and squared by Saturn. So that's the wounded healer and Pallas Athene wisdom coming together, wisdom finally coming together with the wounded healer to help, and the sun right there too, to um to take care of some business that's long overdue. We're in times of great change for certain. Oh, also, Ceres and Eros are trining Juno in Capricorn. There's a lot going on. So, all right, we need to call for something that's more balanced. And before I'm going to finish the last 10 minutes talking a little bit about the media, um, we're looking for new balance. Um, we need to be able to sort through information. We need to absolutely keep freedom of speech. We need to not lose our ability to communicate with each other. We need to not only be, held to get our information from this tyrannical system that separates and divides, because most of us can see through it now and are done with that. So it's very important to keep platforms that allow people to speak the truth alive. We are perfectly able to discern what is good and what's not good and decide for ourselves. That's a sovereign right of the human being. It's important that if somebody is not harming someone or purposely hurting someone, that we're allowed to speak our truth, and we're allowed to share that truth with people who want to receive that truth. Um, if it's going to be violent, or if it's going to be going against the flow of life, that the consciousness of that energy will bring justice upon it. So, all right. I think we will. So that's what this is about. We're going to look at the media, but we're also going to talk about how we can make it good. I I was going to tell some personal stories about my own love of media and my own, awakening to really understand that regardless of how much you respect something, regardless of how much you respect a newspaper or you were raised on it, I was um being a New Yorker for a long time, really raised on the New York Times and the New Yorker, and love and appreciate that publication, and for many many reasons. um when you live in the city, you kind of have to know what's going on, and to be able to talk about what's in the news. But at the same time, in the past several years, I have been able to see the influence, how the arrogance and the elitism, how the hypocrisy, saying one thing yet supporting and being run by people who are doing the exact opposite. And we could go on and on and on. This isn't meant to be really political. That's just sharing a personal coming from someone who's had a subscription, both hard copy and digital, for years and years and years, and then a couple years back, and really now have to really look at what is going on and why. Because as we analyze things, as we look at everything and we weigh things, and as we watch press conferences, listen to speeches, watch this, watch that, and we see how the news reports it, if you're looking at everything, you begin to see the untruths in a way that it's astounding. It's astonishing to see something you love so much that's actually not telling the truth. It's taking a partial truth and then manipulating it to influence a lot of people. And so in that way, I'm holding out for, I'm having hope that all of these things will be regenerated in this next few years. And I believe that's what's meant to happen. I don't believe we can heal these things by being aggressive and angry and having rage. I think we have to tune into our own intuition. Intuition melts through this stuff. And so the thing is that when we have these socially engineered movements that are hysterical and triggering the emotional bodies of large groups of people, it might look like we're making change, but we're creating a seed that holds a perpetual drama and war within it. Using intuition is the real way, and using divine creative powers, being guided by that energy, will show you how to really make a true difference. It doesn't mean we'll be right every time. Sometimes we have to try one thing to understand that maybe that wasn't the best way, but it will definitely connect us. So this was a quote I heard recently from Denzel Washington. He said, "If you don't read the newspaper, you are uninformed. If you read the newspaper, you are misinformed." And that's a lot to think about. So if you don't watch the news or read the newspapers, you're uninformed. But if you read them, oftentimes you're misinformed. And that, from my own personal many hours and now years of research, can see that when you take a look back and you see how things are reported, you see narratives used, media narratives used to mold mass perception, to create polarity and divisiveness, to exploit certain social issues that are exploited. Social issues are the greatest thing to exploit because you tap into the emotional body and you can trigger it. So take any of the social issues, any of the things that involve race, that involve religion, that involve, our rights and, women's rights and civil rights and all of these things. Most people are ready to see things change for the better, but we continue to see a trigger consciousness being generated in Hollywood, in the music industry, and in the media. And these are who are responsible for planting the stereotypes and keeping the fight alive. I guarantee you, if we had balanced places to go and talk about things where real people come on, it doesn't mean real people aren't in the mainstream media, but real situations where people are coming on and really having wise communication, and really, we would see so much more. We would accomplish so much more. And that's what this is about. Rather than being misinformed, we need to create the truth and do it in a way that's positive and that's fueling peace and love. That's not to be, often some like la la land, thinking that everything is all love and peace on this planet, because we know very well there's a lot of real struggle and a lot of fight, and there is a lot of darkness that is doing a lot of bad things, but it's the small amount. It's in comparison to the whole human race, is much more powerful than the amount of people who are so dark that they want to act out violently towards others. Those that are kind of in the middle, that are manipulated and give their power away, end up going into the dark when they don't really need to. If they had free information, if they were really being told the truth and not being plugged with fear, anger, and hate, we would see many, many more people really serving um, empowerment of humanity and of humans on this planet. So there's one thing I was going to say. I saw a woman speak, a whistleblower. Her name was Kathy O'Brien, and she said something so beautiful. I want to say that in this podcast. She talked about how if we don't have free thinking, we don't have free will. And if we don't have free will, we no longer have soul expression. And so that's big. That's big. That's big to think about. If our minds are manipulated, now obviously at some point we agreed to that and handed over our power, but we need to take it back. If we're being manipulated and we're not thinking for ourselves, we have that glazed over look that so many humans have right now. So many human beings, you try to talk to them about something, they just go glazed, they check out. They check out. They're under the mind control of not being able to think outside the box. So if once we're in that state, we're no longer really operating from real free will. There's a manipulation on it. Once we don't have once we're manipulated, we're not truly expressing the soul. So that's why it's so important to seek out balanced, truthful information from a non-triggered point of view. All of us get triggered, but to move past the trigger, I might end on something about that. Soul expression is how we change things. And when more human beings come into the real power of their soul, we have the resources, we have money, we have food, we have this beautiful earth we live on. There is no excuse for poverty. There's not one single excuse for poverty. I mean, I want to say, give me a break. We have astrophysics, we have medicine, we have science, we have like we've done everything. We can feed people in this world. The lies and the excuses that have brainwashed people are not real. They're not real. And we can do it in a way where we don't enable a constant poverty. What we really need to do is where there is poor and where there does need to be regeneration, we need to empower and bring people back into the creative force, so that, because it's also when we enable people, there's definitely a time to take care of people, to take care of our wounded, to take care of our struggling, our poor. We absolutely have to do that. But at the same time, this is where this sort of elitism pretends to be doing all these things for social justice, but it's not really happening. If we enable people and then just say we've done something great and that's it, it doesn't work. We need to really change things and bring people back into their creative power, so that the next generation will be empowered. It's there's so much, and I encourage you to look deeper into that, to look deeper into understanding that this problem of saying that we can't feed people and that people can't have a home to live in, that we can't educate people, that there's people who work full time, both parents, and their kids can't go to college, or they can barely make their mortgage, or they don't have health insurance. No, that's not acceptable. Not even from a you know that's not even from politics. That's from wisdom. That's from human smarts. That's not a political thing to say. It gets politicized. It gets brought into polarity, brought into politics. These issues are not political. Feeding people are not political. These are divine human birthrights, and there is enough food on this planet, and there is enough resources for homes and for everything. And we need people who are really looking for solutions to be running organizations that have so much power. And that is the problem. The problem is that the people who are claiming, there's good people. I don't mean that everybody, but the majority of the control system is not looking for solutions. The dark wants us to be divided, divide and conquer. Keep people in a racist mentality. Keep showing it in movies, keep showing it in videos, keep showing it on the news, keep taking one event here, one event there, blasting it all over the news and telling people. I mean, the reason people have stereotypes is from what they see in the news, what they see in movies. Movies bring stereotypes, and what they see in music videos. So music itself is sometimes putting in deep stereotypes that create fear. Well, we are meant to be able to create and have freedom of expression. But when we change things, um, in the masses, we'll start to see more people. People get bullied if they try to speak the truth, and that's the truth. That if you're trying to speak the truth, you'll have interference. They will show up and say, "Guess what? You can't do that." So, speaking the truth is very important, and staying connected to intuition. I know there's a lot more to say about all that, and I feel very passionately about it. So political correctness is another one. It's gotten taken to the point where this one, I was talking to my son, and my son showed me this video. He watches YouTubers. So I need to finish out in just a minute or two, but I wanted to say this. My son watches some YouTubers. He's 12. There's some YouTubers out now, right now around his age that can see through all of this. These kids are brilliant. They see through the manipulation and they do it with humor. They make these videos that get millions of views. They're showing us what's happening and they're making fun of adults, saying like, how can you do this? How can you, be so dumbed down that you can't question these things? I mean, the controls in place are beyond ridiculous. And so there is a way through all of this. I really, really believe it. That's what this moon is about. Um, Propaganda, we all know what that is, but it's a very big part of it. It's something we need to be aware of. Um, there's narcissism. There is stonewalling and gaslighting. If you know anything about narcissism, well, that's what the media has become. It stonewalls, it blocks conversation, and it gaslights. We see something, we say we see it, but it says, no, you didn't see that, and creates something else. It creates the picture. Um, all right. I think I'm going to bring some of these other things in on the next podcast. I just want to say that obviously, and especially when we get talking about these things, there's many other layers that could be said, but this is just a part of the picture, and hopefully will provide some inspiration for you to use your power of your mind, the power of your heart and your intuition, and to not get swept into a socially engineered movement that's not really designed to heal, but to use your God-given talents to use communication and to create and to figure out what it's going to take to bring us into greater and greater unity. Most of the population wants that. Most everybody wants that. It's the human heart. The human heart wants to unify. And so I am going to sign out right now. I thank you for this podcast, and I will see you next time.